Daz here from Aussie RC Playground, and welcome to my top 5 best beginner aeroplanes that I've owned so far. So a little while ago I did a video on the top 5 worst aeroplanes that I'd flown so far in my flying career, and I wanted to do a top 5 best of. But I couldn't really come up with a solid top 5. It was more like a top 7 or 8 or 9. And I figured, well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these two and do 2 separate categories, one for beginners and one for expert and advanced. So in this video, obviously, we're going to be looking at more beginner airplanes. Now, a couple of disclaimers here. Number one, some of these airplanes aren't necessarily the best first airplane you should buy. So take that into account. These are airplanes that you should get perhaps or consider if you're still in the beginner stages. So if you've perhaps had some flight time in a simulator, or you've been doing really well with something that has a gyro and it's a high wing flight, it's a real trainer, or perhaps you've had some success with somebody training you, with the radio and so forth, there might be something here on the list that you could perhaps consider. The other thing to take into account is that these aren't based on all the aeroplanes that exist out there in the RC world. These are just aeroplanes that I personally have owned. I have flown a couple of airplanes from friends that would potentially make it to this list, but I've excluded those. I'm only including the ones that I personally have owned, whether they've been bought or sent to me for review. That's what the list consists of. So hopefully that's all nice and clear. So let's get this show on the road. So kicking off the number 5 spot, we have the TechOne Hobby Neptune EDF wing. This was a wing that I got from Banggood for review, and what a beautiful wing it is. I think HobbyKing actually sell the same wing, or used to sell it under a different name. And I'm not even sure if Banggood still have this wing at all, but it is an absolutely brilliant wing. If you can get one, get one. It flies incredibly well. It does come out of the box set up to run on a 3-cell 2200 or thereabouts. But I felt that it was, although it was adequate, it did kind of miss a little bit of vertical power, and I upgraded the ESC and been running it on 4S pretty much ever since. And I absolutely love this wing. I think I use like a 1500 to an 1800 4S, and it just flies brilliantly. I absolutely love it. A couple of downsides about this wing. It doesn't do too well in windy conditions. It's got such a large surface area, and because it's running an EDF, you don't have that instant power, that instant prop power that you would normally get with the standard wing. So you do need to keep your wits about you if you're flying it in the wind. And of course it does have a relatively small battery hatch. I had to modify mine slightly just to be able to fit everything in there nice and neat, but that's just me. I'm a bit pedantic with that sort of thing. But other than that, it flies incredibly well. No real bad tendencies at all. It doesn't stall or do anything like that, like really bad. At least I haven't stalled it, so I can't really comment too heavily on that. But it just glides into land incredibly well. It has a couple of grip tabs underneath so you can launch it overhead. And that's a really big positive for somebody that doesn't know how to throw a wing into the air. This will actually help you kind of get it up there fairly quickly. Just give it full power, toss it up into the air, and she's up and away, and it just flies really, really well. I mean, what could I say? It looks great in the air, it sounds fantastic, and it's got plenty of power on 4 cells. So definitely one that I'm going to be hanging on for a very long time, and very deserving of the number 5 spot here on this list. Now, taking up the number 4 spot is the HobbyKing Tech Sumo, and I actually debated a little bit on this one, but ultimately I went based on its flight characteristics. So here's the thing about the Tech Sumo. Number one, it comes as a kit. You have to build it from basically nothing. You got to select your own electrics as well, and in most cases you're going to need to do slight little modifications depending on your setup to make sure that the wing is built correctly and it's set up for your liking. Now, the good thing about this wing is it's made out of EPP foam, which is quite durable. It can be set up a variety of different ways. You can use it as a combat wing, you can use it as an FPV platform, you can use it as a nice little sort of slope soarer if you want to. It can be a speed wing if you really wanted to, although you are limited based on its construction, how much speed you can really get out of it. So it has a variety of different applications. It's quite versatile, it's cheap, and of course, as I said, you can have it as a fairly docile flyer if you want to, or you can set it up kind of like a mild speed, fun little wing like the way I've got mine set up with a 2200 kV motor, and I think it's a 7x4 propeller that I'm running on it. And I run mainly just a 2200 3-cell. That's what I run on mine, with a 50 amp or 60 amp ESC, something like that. So very good wing, durable, and of course, being a kit, And being that it's this cheap, it's a really good opportunity for newcomers as well to learn how to build these wings and how to build these aeroplanes and kind of troubleshoot a few little things and just put it together and give it a shot. I mean, essentially that's really all it is. And that's one of the reasons why I really like it, because its flight characteristics are quite good. It doesn't stall really badly. It comes into glide reasonably well. It's actually quite good. But the thing that really pulls me towards the Tech Sumo, it's my basher. You know, it's my basher wing. I don't mind if I have the odd rough landing. I don't mind if a piece of foam falls off the wing. It still flies fantastic. I actually tried to fly this one through a FPV gate, and I actually did so successfully a couple of times. I mean, that's the fun of this wing, and that's one of the reasons why it made it to the number 4 spot. It's just how versatile it can be depending on what your intentions are with it, what your skill level is with it, and just generally what you want to do with it. So that is the HobbyKing Tech Sumo, and it's taken up the number 4 spot. So taking up the number 3 spot is the Volantex Trainstar Exchange. And if you remember, I actually did a review for this plane quite a long time ago. And believe it or not, I still own it today. And that's really because the plane has, I suppose, many layers. It came with 2 wings out of the box. One was a 3-channel wing, which means it had no ailerons, but it had quite a bit of dihedral, allowing the plane to kind of settle in, and you could just fly it on 3 channels, which was your elevator, rudder, and throttle. And then, of course, as your skills develop, you can move that up to the 4-channel wing, which had ailerons, and of course that allows you to, do rolls and fly inverted and do all those sorts of more advanced maneuvers that, as your skills develop. I think that's a really cool thing. So quite a versatile aeroplane. Another cool thing that I really like about this one is the fact that it has a plastic molded fuselage, which means it's a little bit more durable than your foam. It tends to be a little bit heavier, but you kind of trade that off for durability. I've had a couple of rough landings with it, and the landing gear's hung on. In fact, I've actually bent the landing gear, and if the fuselage had been foam, more than likely I would have ripped the landing gear out of the plane, and it just didn't happen on this one. So very impressed with this aircraft. In fact, I've actually upgraded the power system, and I think the last video I did with it was one where I was doing like 90-mile-an-hour plus passes with it on 4-cell. I mean, this is an absolutely brilliant airplane, and believe it or not, the wings are only hanging on with elastic bands. So quite a good aircraft, and definitely very deserving of the number 3 spot here on this list. Now, second place goes to an old favorite, and that is the Bixler 2. This was one of my very first 4-channel airplanes, and I had to build it up from kit form. I put it all together. I had some old electrics lying around, and it flew amazing. And believe it or not, on the first time that I flew it, I crashed it. But that's the beauty of the Bixler. A bit of tape, bit of hot glue, you put it all back together, and it was back and ready to fly again the next day. And I flew this thing for a very long time, and I learned a lot of skills with this aircraft. It was an absolutely brilliant plane to fly in with a bit of wind. It flew fantastic on a calm day. It allowed me to put flaps on it as well. And then, of course, I started to go a little bit crazy with it, and I started powering it up and trying to go real fast with this plane. And that really wasn't what it was designed to do. I went a bit crazy with it. In the end, I ended up dismantling the plane. I threw it all out, and I just kept the electrics. I regret doing that. I wish I had just kept it as it was. And who knows, maybe one day I'll get another one and just keep it here just as a memento and fly it every once in a while. Because the beauty of this plane is that it is a pusher prop. It's incredibly light. Doesn't really have any bad tendencies as far as stalls or anything like that. It's quite docile, so it doesn't have a very acute sort of roll rate, even on high rates. You're gonna find that it's actually quite easy to fly this particular plane. It's a nice, easy belly lander. It just has a lot of really cool things, and the fact that it runs us on a standard 2200 3-cell is absolutely brilliant. And in most cases, on a battery like that with a bit of wind, you should be able to get well over 10-minute flights. So definitely well deserving of the number 2 spot. It only missed out by number 1 just by the slightest of margins, at least in my opinion anyway. But I know there's a lot of people out there that will see the Bixler as their all-time favorite. But yeah, definitely on this list deserves the number 2 spot. So here we are for the number 1 spot, and that goes to the Volantex Ranger 1.6 meter. Now, as I said, I was tossing up between the Bixler 2 and the Volantex Ranger, and I know some people may have an opinion on that. But ultimately I gave it to the Ranger for a few reasons. One being that the electrics on the Ranger are actually far more reliable and probably more suited to that aircraft than the electrics that come on the plug-and-play version of the Bixler. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is the Ranger comes with a molded plastic fuselage, which ultimately is more durable and allows you to put bigger batteries. Now, I suppose one downside could be that the Ranger runs on a 4-cell, whilst the Bixler runs on a 3-cell. That being said, a 2200 4S in the Ranger, I have managed to get over 20-minute flight times. Now, that's not always throttle on. That's a mix of gliding and throttle, of course. But I did get over 20 minutes on a 2200 4-cell, and that is a big plus. I suppose another downside with the Ranger is that it doesn't come with flaps, but that being said, it is a slightly heavier aircraft, as I said, so it comes down and lands quite nicely once it touches down. The Bixler, being so light, actually floats for a hell of a lot longer, so the flaps are almost a necessity in order to slow that plane down. The Ranger doesn't really need that. I think the 2-meter Ranger does come with flaps, but not the 1.6. I kind of wish it did in a way, but it's not really a big deal. So there are pros and cons with both planes. I prefer the Ranger because of the electrics, the fact that I can run much bigger batteries in it as well. It makes an excellent FPV platform, and it just has excellent flight characteristics, much like the Bixler. So we could be splitting hairs here. Some people might hold the Bixler at a high value, some might not, I don't know. But in my eyes, the Ranger kind of takes top spot, although by a very narrow margin. I think it's well deserving and definitely something that you would consider getting. As I said, I only bought that plane recently because a lot of my planes are acrobatic, or they're fast, or they're a little bit expensive, and the Ranger came up on sale during a HobbyKing sale. I think I paid like $100 and something for it, with free shipping as well, and I couldn't resist. I had to have it, and it's just cool to have a plane that flies for as long as it does and as well as it does, and you don't have to stress. And if you've had a long day, or you just want to relax on the weekend and go for a quick flight, this is the plane I go to. I don't have to worry too much about it. I can take just a couple of batteries and I can be out there for close to an hour. So yeah, that's why this thing has the #1 spot. So there we are, that is my top 5 beginner aeroplanes that I've owned so far. But before we go, I do want to give out a couple of honourable mentions. #1, the Rock Hobby Wacko. I have a red and white version of this plane and I absolutely love it. Now, this may not be so much a beginner airplane, you kind of start pushing towards the intermediate side of things, but it is such a nice, easy flyer that I think anybody that's had a couple of aeroplanes in the past, especially if you've had something that's a little bit, I suppose, more acrobatic, maybe if you had a wing or something like that, I think you really enjoy this aircraft. It has plenty of power, it looks absolutely amazing, especially in the sky. It looks really, really good in the sky. And it just flies on a 2200 3-cell, which if you've had any of the previous planes, more than likely you'll have batteries for this. And I really find it a nice flyer. It can be acrobatic, but you can dial down your rates, fly it really scale, and just enjoy it for what it is. Definitely one worth mentioning, and definitely one of my favorite planes that I currently own. Now, the next one is one that I've recommended people buy as one of their first aeroplanes, especially if you want to skip some of the simulator stuff. You can jump into something like this and go out and try to fly, I suppose. There are some pros and some cons with this plane, but ultimately I think it is worth a mention, and that is the HobbyZone Super Cub S. So this is a plane that I owned a little while ago, and I actually got this plane to help train my kids how to fly. So it's a 3-channel aeroplane. There is no optional wing for you to kind of run it with ailerons, at least not that I'm aware of. And it's just, it comes with a gyro, it has a panic button, it has the Horizon Hobby Safe mode. So you got the 3 flight modes that come with it. It's running a brushed motor, so it's not going to be super quick. And the way that they've done this is actually with a pinion and a spur gear. So the prop actually spins on a spur while the motor is mounted underneath with the little pinion. So it doesn't sound, it's a little bit loud, I guess, for a propeller aeroplane, but some of the cool features are that it has, of course, the safe technology. It has a flexible prop, and you don't have to hand launch it. You can just take off from the ground and actually land on the ground as well. And given its size, it can actually handle a little bit of a breeze here and there. So definitely something worth considering if you're in the beginner stages of flying. I think a 3-channel aeroplane makes things really easy and simple. and you can get used to the controls and sort of move up into an advanced mode with that aircraft. So definitely worth mentioning, and that's why it's on this list as well. And just like that, we are done. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. As always, don't forget to check out the video description. I'll try and have some links in there to some of the planes that I've mentioned here today. I'll also have links in there to my top 5 worst aeroplane video, if you want to go and check that one out. And of course, links to my social media pages. Again, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll speak to you all next time.